And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Marcella.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. Today's presenter is Marianne Fideli-McLeod. You may know her as the CALPRO Project Director. She is also currently the Project Director for the Promoting Teacher Effectiveness in Adult Education project. That project, through a contract with Octay, developed the adult education teacher competencies about which Marianne will be speaking today. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to Marianne. Marianne?
Yes, thanks, Marcella. And can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you, Marianne.
Okay, then I'll go ahead. Hi, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here today, both as the CALPRO director, but also to present other work that I've been involved with for the last few years that has wrapped up recently. And we're really pleased to be able, California is actually the first state, and you all are the first folks to have received the teacher competencies that I'm going to be discussing. And I'm looking forward to any discussion or questions you might have and to helping you in any way we can with using them. So without further ado, I'll start by just giving a little bit of background to the project and the development of the competencies, and then we'll be sort of refreshing ourselves on that document and then having some discussion. So the adult education teacher competencies were developed within a project called the Promoting Teacher Effectiveness Project that is funded by Octay, or was funded by Octay, beginning in 2011, I believe. The goal of the project as a whole is twofold: to create a set of teacher competencies that we'll be discussing, and the competencies are meant to describe what an effective teacher needs to know and be able to do. And as part of that project, we also developed a teacher induction toolkit. Maybe at a later date, I will present on that. Teacher induction, as I'm sure you all know, is just a method that uses mentoring as its basis to support beginning teachers in their role. And it looks like, I'm reading the comments as we go. It looks like a couple of you are saying that I am not clear. Let me see if I can fix that. Catherine, is that better? No.
Marianne, you might want to try a couple of sentences so we can see if there is a difference.
I'm sorry, Catherine. You don't have to apologize. Okay. Well, let's see. Chris, I have the microphone I have. I don't know if I have too many options right now. I'm going to see a bunch of you are writing, so I'm kind of curious about what you're going to say. And maybe we'll move on. There's an echo with Marianne's voice. Yes, as Dana said. I don't know, Chris, do you have any tricks that I might want to employ right now so this is a better experience for these guys?
I'm sorry, I was on the phone with helping somebody else. What was the question?
I think there's various problems with my mic. It looks like an echo or not clear. I don't know if there's any tricks that I can use right now to make this sound better.
Did you run the audio setup wizard?
I did. I do, Janet. That's it.
Okay. How about you and I swap headsets?
Come on down.
Okay. Be right back.
Sorry, guys. I want you to be able to hear. Oh, that is clear to go.
Fortunately, they're right down the hall from each other, so hopefully this will be a relatively quick fix for our technical issue that we're experiencing.
Yes, thank you. Does that have a microphone? Yes. Okay. All right. Just be careful that you don't talk this. It's going to need the red light. All right, let's give it a go.
And now she's probably just running the audio setup wizard to just make sure that we have good sound when she does come back. Thank you, everyone, for your patience with this.
Okay, Marcella and all, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you. I can't tell yet if it's better.
Okay.
Do you want to just go on? Oh.
I'm really sorry, guys. I think not better. Really not sure why. Well, I think at this point, and I apologize, we've tried a second headset, but I do feel like I better maybe just speak up. It's just my voice. And proceed. Otherwise, I think we could spend the whole hour on technical difficulties. Let's see. Last thing I'll try.
Marianne, you just might want to make sure the microphone is as close to your voice or to your mouth as you can.
Sorry, Lynn, we can't reschedule, so I'm going to forge ahead and doing on this microphone, so I hope it's a little bit better for you guys.
It is better, I think.
Sure. Sorry about that, everybody. Let me proceed then. At any rate, so that was a little word about the project. The two main materials are the competencies and the induction toolkit. And of course, today is a focus on the competencies. So as a matter of background, we began the project by looking into the world of research and literature on teacher competencies and what is meant by teacher competencies. And so on the PowerPoint slide in front of you is the working definition that we use to guide our work about what teacher competencies are. And in short, they're those characteristics, knowledge, skills, mindsets, thought patterns, and the like, that when used singularly or in combination result in successful performance. The adult, and that's competencies generally and globally. The adult education teacher competencies were specifically developed to support adult education teachers, and the U.S. Department of Ed, OCTE, felt that with the shifts in the landscape of adult education, both in terms of legislation such as WIOA, as well as the demands on learners, that a set of new competencies that define what adult education teachers should go and be able to do were needed at this point. And that was the main motive behind funding a project like this at this time. We began the process of developing the competencies and doing the research in 2011. In 2012 and then in 13, 14, we had a series of validation processes. So I think the version that you're looking at or received is probably about the 10th or 12th version of the competency. So we began by studying teacher competence and then creating a draft set of competencies and then bringing them to the field through multiple forums like the COED conference and the links, community of practice and discussion lists, and we pilot tested them as part of our teacher induction toolkit pilot. Before I go on to describing a bit about the competencies, I'm looking at the chat box and wondering if you have any questions about any of that background. I know it was brief. By design, it was brief. Let's see, anybody typing, so I'll forge ahead. Please, I am keeping my eye open, so please feel free to ask questions as we go. So the adult education teacher competencies, this is just a slide that shows the architecture, the way the competencies are structured as a whole. So there, and I think that to understand it is we go from very broad to very specific as we go from top to bottom. So the domains. The 4 domains that are the basis of the competencies represent broad areas of activity for an adult education teacher. The first domain monitors and manages student learning and performance through data. And then there are several competencies associated with that. Planning and delivering high-quality evidence-based instruction. Third, effectively communicating to motivate and engage learners. And 4, pursuing professionalism and growing as a professional by building your knowledge and skills. Within each of those 4 areas, there are between 4 and 5 competencies per domain. So within those 4 domains, there are 17 individual observable competencies that represent knowledge, skills, and abilities that any adult ed instructor should possess to be effective within that domain. And with the competencies, they were specifically written to be performance-based or observable. So we hope that the way they're written are ways that you as teachers or your colleagues or those that you supervise would be able to understand and get a sense of, here's what I must do, be able to do, here's what I must know, and be able to demonstrate that I know it. Associated with each competency to help it, again, going from very broad to more specific, we developed for each competency a set of performance indicators. And those performance indicators articulate what the competency looks like in an adult ed teaching context. And again, it's just a way of going from something that's theoretical to understandable and practical. For each performance indicator, we have sample illustrations. And those sample illustrations just give an example in an actual adult ed setting, whether it be ESL, basic literacy, high school equivalency, we didn't use CTE, but bridge to CTE classes. And again, it was to enliven the competency and make it understandable. Let's see. And Dana Galloway asks, when exactly did these competencies come out? They are not out yet. They should be available nationally, I think in about 2 weeks. So this group is actually the very first group to see these. I'm really pleased that we're able to do it in our home state of California. And hope that you share them and have folks feel free to get in touch if there's questions about it. We're really excited to have them available and to bring them to you today. Okay, and this slide is just an example. You've all received in advance a copy of the competencies for review along with a couple of questions. So here, there we go. The domain in this example is the second domain, plans and delivers high quality instruction. The competency in this first column is competency 5, so domain 2, competency 5, designs instruction to build higher order thinking skills. For this competency, 2.5, we have, I want to say it's about 4 or 5 actually, performance indicators. But right next to the competency in the next column are the performance indicators associated with that competency. And then for each performance indicator, we have a sample illustration, which just gives an example. So again, we go from very broad to observable and more specific to observable and actionable, and then an example. And there can be many, many examples. And Lynn Bellamy, you asked, do adult schools nationwide get a copy of this with directions to share with their instructors? Is there any follow-up? This is a good question. Nationwide, these competencies, and these are all, the competencies developed by Octave are not mandatory. We hope that they are in use. So we hope to get a copy of competencies in everyone's hands. In terms of the level of instruction, honestly, it's pretty limited. It is the introduction to the competencies that's in the document. I'll be showing you in just a bit the instructor self-assessment that comes with the competencies, but it's actually one of my later questions for this session is, are there any resources that you would want to see to support use of the competencies, understanding these, so they're really helpful, and we hope that they are. Thanks for that question. Oh, I'm sorry you can't understand me. I apologize for that. I am not sure what to do about this microphone. And Marcella and Chris, if you have suggestions, I would appreciate them. Oh, and Cecilia, my last name is Fidelia McLeod, Marianne Fidelia McLeod. So let me go on. Again, I apologize to those of you who might be having. Who can benefit from the competencies? Who did we do? Who's the audience for this? Is the point of this next set of slides, which I'll go over very quickly. We hope that in all levels of adult education that they will be of some use. We know that beginning teachers in any setting, K-12, community college, or adult ed, have a sharp learning curve when they enter their first year of teaching. We also know that in particular adult education teachers may have little prior preparation for their teaching position, and in many cases don't have, are not necessarily adequately prepared for the challenges in the classroom. So that we're hoping for beginning teachers, these competencies are supportive of them in understanding what their role is as an adult education teacher, in addition to any of those roles that are required of the district or institution that they work in. Oh, Lynn, I see that you have a follow-up question. This presentation will be available on the CALPRO website. So we're hoping that experienced teachers can also benefit from use of these competencies. Experienced teachers in our work with U.S. Department of Ed are teachers who've been in their subject for 5 to 7 years. And we hope that experienced teachers will use the competencies as a source of reflection and self-assessment of their own practice. We know that teachers who've been in the field a long time may not have had recent training, substantial training, and may find that there's new knowledge and skills that they want to acquire through professional development. And we hope that the competencies can support them in identifying those areas they might want to work on. The competencies can be used to support mentoring or coaching, so that a mentor teacher, an experienced teacher, can create an articulated plan of development for a beginning teacher that they're mentoring, for example. And this is in fact how the competencies were used as part of our pilot, our teacher induction pilot. The competencies may also be used by administrators or instructional leaders in programs to guide their programs in instructional improvement or create induction or mentoring programs. The competencies could serve as a guide for classroom observation or to identify professional development needs of individual teachers or groups of teachers. And finally, professional developers can use the competencies to guide the type of professional development they create for whomever they serve. So for example, one of the competencies, one of the domains is around using data to inform instruction. You might want to use the competencies and performance indicators and illustrations in that domain to create a professional learning module on what it means to use data and how to do that. Okay. And as a resource for you all and anyone who uses the competencies, the project has also developed an online teacher self-assessment tool that will enable a user to consider their own abilities, consider the relevance of the competency of their teaching priorities and program priorities, and to reflect and make a plan for professional development. There are 2 links here. The first link is for purposes of today's session. We put the self-assessment on the CALPRO site, so you all will have access to it. In a couple of weeks, when everything goes live nationally, the self-assessment will live on the links site, which is the Octave site. And I will go to that quickly. Let's Chris, see if I can make you proud and remember how to do this. Share the screen. So you all bear with me. Chris, could you let me know verbally if you all can see the self-assessment?
We can see it, Marianne.
Fantastic, thank you.
Good job.
Just taking okay. If there's two that really are, she has to go in. Okay, fine. Thank you. So in terms of the, what you're seeing in front of you is you can also link to it after this section is over using the CALPRO link that I just did. It's a self-assessment. It is not attached to a database, so what you can't do is go in, create a user account, do the self-assessment, and then come back to it later. You could print it. It's just a simple form, or you can use it. You could either print it in its blank form and then fill it out yourself, or you can manipulate it online and then get the various subtotals. So the way this is set up is by domain. Right? So here's our first domain, monitors and manages student learning. You can see the competencies. You can see the competencies associated with that domain, and then if you want to, you can also see the individual performance indicators and the individual sample illustrations associated with each competency. And this is a really basic Likert scale tool. So you decide what is the relevance to my teaching. In this case, 4 means highly relevant, 1 is not relevant. What's my own proficiency? I need improvement is the highest score, and is it a priority? The highest score is 4. And the reason it's set up this way is at the end, it's those competencies that have the highest score or the domains for which you have the highest score.
Marianne, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just me, but I can't hear you at all now.
Oh no! Can anybody? I'm really sorry, guys. I'm not sure how to.
You just keep breaking up.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to ask how that is.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, Jim. There's a challenge to read in here. You can use the link that is included in the PowerPoint. Marcella, can you hear any better? I'm going to try and really enunciate. Mic clear now. Seems like a pretty mixed bag out there. Those of you who can hear me and those of you having difficulty. But I feel like I should press on. And it's Chris, could you give me or Marcella, can you give me a thumbs up if I'm back on the presentation?
Yeah, you're on self-assessment tool
Okay, thank you very much.
on the main presentation.
Okay, thank you. So you asked a question about where to find the self-assessment. For right now, it is at this link. And in a couple of weeks, when these are available to the public, it will be at this link. So you can use either. We'll keep it up at the CALPRO development site for this group for a while. Okay, let me go on. Okay, so for the next couple of minutes, what I'd like to do, I have a question for this group. What we heard back through the validation process of the competencies and when we pilot tested the competencies, well, there's a lot to focus on, right? There's 17 individual competencies. Each of them has between, I think, 3 and 6 sample performance indicators and sample illustrations. It's a lot of material, and when looked at in its totality, it can be very overwhelming and hard to see how, me as a teacher, how any one of us could aspire to do all of that well. And so I guess for this question, what I'm going to ask of you, because it turned out to be a helpful way of framing the competencies for others, is what are the big ideas? If you back out, if you consider each of the domains and the competencies, it's they're trying to create a message about what good contemporary teaching is for learners who are in today's world. So I'm going to ask you together to just, I don't know those of you who have the document in front of you, so I'm just putting this up. It's the short form of the competencies that will be available to you at the end of this session. Let's spend 2 minutes of quiet reflection on the document, these domains, which are domains which go down the side, and the competencies in that domain which go across. Let's just spend a little time looking at them, and then I'm going to ask you to give your thoughts about what big ideas you see within each domain with competencies. So 2 minutes, please. Thank you, Helen. I'm going to go to, I'm hoping that you can hang on to those thoughts. I'm in just a moment going to go to the new slide that has a chat box associated um, with each of the domains for everybody to write in. Thank you for that input. I'm hoping you can hang on to it for just a moment. That I should go to. Okay. So I'm hoping you can all hear me. You'll see here that this is our main question. What are the big ideas of each domain as reflected in the competencies and performance indicators? Then you'll see in the columns each of the domains named: monitors and manages student learning, plans and delivers high quality instruction, effectively communicates, pursues professionalism, and continues to build knowledge and skills. Please, at the bottom of each of those chat pods, your thoughts on what big ideas you see inside each of those domains. I'll give you just a couple minutes to share your thoughts. Thank you, Catherine. I see that you have inputted in the general chat pod. We'll try to note these down. Okay, my mic is back on, and I'm hoping you all can hear me. Brenda, can you please continue with your input? I'm going to press on. And I've been, as you're writing, I am, of course, reading along. And just want you can all read each other's input, so I'm not going to read them verbatim. But I would say your feedback is very similar to feedback we received from around the country. And I hope this was helpful as an activity to see the big picture of the competencies rather than get lost in the details of them, which can be a bit overwhelming. So with respect to the first domain, monitoring and managing student learning and performance through data, several of your comments really stood out to me. So I'll just kind of pick through. Tracy, use data to support ongoing learning. And I think that's really one of the keys is we're using data, not just collecting data. And let's see. We are using one of the big ideas of the first domain is to use multiple sources of data. And several of you point to that as you discuss the use of formative assessments as well as student feedback and student histories. So what we're not doing is relying solely on summative assessment data to both understand learner needs and to plan instruction. So, and right, as Bernadine, as you wrote, using data as a feedback loop. So again, I think the same idea that Tracy was getting to, which is we're actually using data to support learning and not just collecting data for reporting purposes. And we're using multiple data sources, including our adult learners and their inputs on their goals and their needs. Jim, I will happily give you the last word. I see you typing in domain 1. No pressure. I will go on to domain 2, and Catherine Powell, yes, that first word, mindfulness. What we're getting to with domain 2 is many things, and I think that is planfulness is one of the words that I've used over time. That and there's this link between the first domain and the second domain. They're not really not supposed to be standalone. And Jim, yes, assessments for learning and not assessments of learning is the idea behind that first domain. Thank you for that final word on domain 1. And in terms of domain 2, yes, mindfulness, planfulness. We're utilizing that data. We're not just collecting that data, and then we're being planful with it. We're using those multiple sources of information to create lessons, and to teach and to support learning. And we are concerned both with our approach to learning, so a learner-centered approach, the use of relevant content standards to inform what is taught. For example, the College and Career Readiness Standards, or an example, you might have program content standards. So we're concerned with the approach, how we teach, and also concerned with the substance of what we teach, which is foundational skills, including higher order thinking skills, relevant content to the students' learning needs and goals, and digital literacy skills are included in those foundational skills. And yes, Tracy, we're using students' prior knowledge to assist in understanding what we should be teaching. And this is Alan, your comment, using identified student prior life experiences to construct model concepts. Yes. And thank you all for these. And I'm reading through for all of your inputs on domain 2. I'm happy to give somebody else final word. That might be Tracy in this case. And I'll go on to domain 3. Effectively communicates and motivates to engage learners. Yeah, we are we're humans connecting with other humans. I think that's the very core of this. And in addition to being clear and understandable and using level appropriate language, we are also concerned with engaging with our students as learners and motivating them. And in some of your feedback, Catherine Powell, I completely agree. This is one of the most important qualities of a good teacher. It involves listening to students, engaging them, and respecting what they bring to the classroom. And I really think, Catherine, with that comment, you sort of encapsulated what this domain is around communication is about. And yes, Jim, building community within the classroom to support peer-to-peer learning. Thank you all. These are all excellent comments that I'll probably use in future presentations on these competencies. And finally, the fourth domain, pursuing professionalism and continuing building knowledge and skills. Catherine Powell, not phoning it in, maintaining passion for teaching and acting on it. I completely agree with that. And I think the big idea is that, as many of you have said, that as teachers, we are reflecting and we're open to change and examining our practice and adapting our practice based on that reflection, based on the feedback we receive. So we're also looking for evidence within our own practice of how to improve that practice and seeking to improve that practice and to support other teachers in improving their practice as well. And Tracy writes, and Tracy, this is a great last word on this, continue to be a student myself, be able to grow professionally. I think that is a great last word for this particular discussion. Thank you for that one. And so with that, I will, thank you, Alan. I will go back to the presentation. And about 15 minutes left. So the additional discussion, and this is really, again, I think this is, the reason we want to talk about this is because we want my perspective and the U.S. Department of Ed's perspective, we really want these competencies to be used and useful. And I would love to understand more about what you all need in order for these competencies to be useful and used. So once again, there are 3 chat pods, and I'll ask you to consider and weigh in. The first question is, what shifts in practice and instruction do the competencies require? So for an individual teacher who is engaged with these independent programs, true, Cecilia, for an individual teacher to engage with the competencies and use them to improve their practice, what does it mean for them? What are the implications of the competencies for teachers? The second question is, how could you use the competencies to improve your own practice for those teachers that you work with, and what resources would help you use the competencies? So I will be silent again for a few minutes as I ask you to consider those questions and add them to the chat pod. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And please, those who are checking, please continue to do so. And while some of you are finishing up typing in the second two chat pods, let's discuss shifts in practice and instruction of the competencies you require. And as many of you know, one of the big areas is on data, how we, what is relevant data to inform, improve student learning outcomes and more effective instruction. And then how do we use it and how do we plan using it? It's definitely one of the major shifts. I think as you note, the openness to change, that you all wrote very, very eloquently about each piece. And as Cheryl wrote, for teachers in my district, this requires them to have deep understanding of some of the assessments. So yes, I'm being urged to speak louder, so I will do so. I didn't think of myself as a very restrained speaker. Maybe I am. At any rate, in terms of the shifts in practice, collaboration is certainly a big one that comes out of this. Openness to change and examination of practice, and in fact, change in instructional practice, the use of standards, as one of the basis for instruction, really effective processes at understanding student learning needs. So those are some of the big shifts. You all know there are many shifts that, depending on context especially, would need to occur. In terms of what you need to improve your own practice, to use competencies to improve practice or improve the practice of those you work with, as many of you note, time and or professional development. All of these things take time. Time is, of course, has a budget implication. We all know this. So to do all of the things and to gain the knowledge and skill needed to effectively embrace the competencies would take a teacher time, would take a program time. And would take support and professional development both at the program level and from multiple professional development sources, such as CALPRO, for example. So these would all be things that I think we can all agree would be needed. And again, looking through your comments as you're writing. And finally, the third piece, what resources would help you use the competencies? I'm glad the self-assessment tool will be useful. And I think, Lynn, as you know, administrative support, collegial discussion, really program engagement would be needed. This would be hard for an individual teacher on his or her own to do well. It's not a on your own endeavor. It would really be a program endeavor, a state endeavor. Right, Tracy, as you note, collaboration with colleagues, the engagement of seasoned teachers with beginning teachers, and the engagement of a principal or a leader is definitely important. And certainly there should be, there would be professional development offered through any number of sources would certainly be helpful to the use of competencies. That's really it from me. It is a few minutes early, but that's fine. All of you extremely good comments and really reflect a lot of what we've heard across the country with respect to the competencies. And again, I'm very happy that we were able to offer these to you, to the state of California, our home state first, Again, they will be going out nationally. And on this page, you'll see you can download all of the documents, the competencies document you have. Um, this presentation is also available to you if you want to keep the links and the questions and have program discussion. Thank you, Chris, for that pointer. If you could go all the way down to the 2 megabyte file called competencies graphic with it.
I'm sorry, I can't go off of the slides. That's as far down as it'll go.
That's all right. There is in the handouts, you'll see the competencies graphic. There is a interactive graphic that you available to you to use. It has all the same information, just probably slightly more digestible than the 15 or so pages of the competencies. And with that said, I am happy to answer any questions any of you have about the competencies. I'm here in Sacramento. I don't have my phone number, but you all have the CALPRO phone number, and that's where I am. So you can feel free to email or call me. I'm happy to discuss this. And Marcella and Chris, that's all I got. And I'm
Thanks, Marianne. Before everyone leaves today, I'd like to encourage you to please be sure to complete the evaluation. Your feedback is always really important for us as we work to continue to improve these webinars for our series. And please do get in touch with Marianne. She's very well versed in these competencies, and she'll be an excellent resource for you as you work to implement these in your program. As we said before, these will be available online, and in the meantime, they are here on this page for you to download, and they were also emailed out to you. So thank you again, and thanks for joining us. And thank you, Marianne.
You are very welcome. Pleasure.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris. I'm going to leave the meeting room open for a little bit longer because I know you guys want to get those handouts. In case you can hear me, I did type it in the chat pod, but that box below the green arrow is where the handouts are located. When you click on the one you want, there should be a button that comes available that says Save to My Computer. You'll have to repeat if you want more than one handout, but that's how that works. Oh, somebody moved the green arrow. Okay, the green arrow is now back above the correct box with the handouts. It shouldn't take you out of the presentation. It might be in another window, Alan. Box is no longer responsive. I'll tell you what, if you want to send me an email, I will send it to you. That's CalPro. Here, I'll type in the email. calprohelp@air.org. Okay, does anybody need more time downloading the handouts? When I close the meeting room, it should open up in a new window. It might be behind the one that you're looking at now. It should open up the evaluation form that was mentioned previously. If for some reason you don't get it, you can again email me at calprohelp@air.org and I can send you the link to that evaluation. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the room. Thanks, guys.